Okay. Good morning, everyone. So just waiting to sort of let everyone join the webinar. So just some ground rules whilst you're waiting. So as I said, we're going to wait till the number of people joining sort of plateaus and then we'll start the session. The session is being recorded and the recording will be made available after the webinar. If you are wanting to ask a question sort of during the presentation, there is a Q&A box where you can ask a question, and you can also like other attendees' questions, and this will help us sort of identify popular questions and they're more likely to then be asked during the webinar. Kindly ask you not to use the chat to ask any questions, as we might not actually spot those questions, and then you won't be able to, and people won't be able to upvote either. And as I said, so both the recording and a Q&A document are going to be circulated at a later date. So I can still see attendees rising, so we'll just let everyone have a minute more to get online. Okay, so I think we're sort of plateaued there. There's a few more people coming in. If you sort of only just joined, so just to let you know, the session is being recorded. If you do want to ask a question, do open the Q&A window to put those questions in there. You can like other attendees' questions as well, and this will help us identify those popular questions. So click on that thumbs up icon. That means that question is more likely to be answered live today at the webinar. Don't use the chat to ask any questions, so you might not spot it and therefore you won't be able to answer it, and you won't be able to upvote it either. And then both the recording and a Q&A document will be circulated afterwards. So the timeline for the scheme is on the side of my slide. So the opportunity is currently open on the funding finder. We're here at the webinar today, and basically I'm going to give a brief overview of the scheme, and then I'm going to hand over to a colleague to tell you more about using the new funding service. And in terms of the closing dates, the closing date for applications is the 16th of November. So just to let you all know, I'm Samantha Moore and I'm a programme manager in the training careers team at the MRC. And quite often, if you do email the CARP inbox, you'll get a response either from myself or our funding manager, Jamie, who's going to help with the Q&A at the end of the session. So let's get started. So hopefully you have had a chance to have a little bit of a look about the scheme and you sort of understand the aims, but sort of just to reiterate, this funding opportunity is to provide research qualified healthcare professionals who are currently not undertaking sort of any substantial research activity, the opportunity to form a collaborative, high quality research partner with established leading biomedical and applied health researchers, and also to provide them with protected research time and funding so they can enhance their research skills and experience. Okay. So who can actually apply to this scheme? So to be eligible, you need to be a member of NHS staff or staff contracted to the NHS or working in the care and the public health sectors. So it's very much open to healthcare professionals. So this includes, but it's not limited to, nurses, midwives, allied health professionals, healthcare scientists, doctors, pharmacists, clinical psychologists, dentists, public health practitioners, and others sort of working in primary care, secondary care, community care, or public health. You need to be working at a consultant level or in a sort of other senior role, for example, Agenda for Change Band 7. And you have to be working at that senior level with that specialised knowledge and sort of demonstrable capacity for professional independence and leadership. You need to hold a PhD, MD or equivalent, and that equivalence is, for example, 3 years of consolidated research time where you've been the intellectual drive behind the project and achieved strong outputs from your research experience. You shouldn't be undertaking any substantive research activity and will usually have limited or no research funding. When I talk about that substantive research activity. If you're doing research during your spare time, you're not being sort of remunerated for it, that wouldn't count towards that substantive research activity. And we basically expect you to have sort of less than half a day a week dedicated to research within your current job contract. You're going to need at least one research partner who will be a co-lead on the application, and they need to be based in an eligible research organisation. And they have to be able to provide you a suitably stable environment for the duration of the award. You also need the support of your NHS organisation or equivalent who can actually guarantee that that research time will be protected. So we do get quite a lot of frequently asked questions about eligibility. So here's some sort of example questions that we get asked. So some people may already have 2 programs of activity, so a day a week of research already in their job contract, and they ask if they can apply. And we very much welcome applications from applicants with that more dedicated research time, but you're going to need to sort of ensure that you can articulate the added value of the award. We quite often get asked, I don't have a PhD, can I apply? So if you can demonstrate that you have experience equivalent to a PhD MD, we can consider an application. And within that application, you would need to articulate your research capabilities and how you are able to lead and deliver the research that you've proposed. Can you hold research funding as a lead I hold research funding as a lead investigator, can I apply? So applicants will generally have no or limited research funding. So small scale funding wouldn't make someone unsuitable, and there definitely isn't a strict cutoff. But if you currently have sort of large scale funding, this could impact your competitiveness. So you need to be able to articulate the added value of the award. And if you are concerned about that, you should really get in touch with the CARP team. And then so finally, I completed my PhD recently, can I apply? So there are no eligibility rules based on time since applicants obtain their PhD or MD. However, if you haven't had that significant break in research activity, we do really encourage you to investigate those other schemes that you might be eligible for example, the MRC Clinician Scientist Fellowship or the NHR Advanced Fellowship. So what are we looking for? So in terms of the project, we welcome applications across all remit and interest areas of MRC and NIHR. So MRC supports research spanning the biomedical spectrum from that fundamental discovery science through to early clinical trials and preventative medicine. And then we interface along that spectrum with NIHR, who are going to fund research on optimizing existing treatments and research on the provision delivery of health and social care services. So the spectrum of applications and the remit is very broad for this scheme. We welcome applications that are proposing interdisciplinary approaches or research that will actually address global health issues that may benefit those living in low and middle income countries. The project itself needs to be tailored to your interests and to your expertise and to those of your research partner, and sort of really designed to provide that mutually beneficial collaboration. It should be of benefit to yourself and to your research partner or partners if you have multiple. And these awards themselves are flexible, so you can really tailor the support to your individual collaborative plans. If you are unsure about the remit of your project, you can send in a one-page project outline for us to check before applying to the scheme. So also within that application, you really need to be able to describe how you extend and develop your research skills and experience. You've got to be able to demonstrate that the partnership has a clear value to both you and your research partner, and explain why this award is the best way to support a step change in your research career. And then when we're talking about that step change, what is it that we're looking for? So a step change is from where you are now in your research career, and this is going to be very personal to you. So some people may have no research time whatsoever and haven't had for a long time. So basically this is a step back into research. Others may have a small amount, and this is basically to sort of capitalise and further themselves using this award. You also should be thinking about your exit plan. If you are successful, how are you going to get to the point where you want to be at the end of the award, and what do you need to get there? And it very much make it clear that it's no requirement to continue down that traditional clinical academic research career following the award, but the award itself should actually be able to catalyse you to be more able to engage in research in the long term. So you could be looking to become a clinical academic, but equally, very keen for making research capable clinicians. So examples of how it may help you more able to engage in research in a long time. Perhaps you'll be continuing links with your research partner beyond the end of the award. Perhaps it will put you in a bit better position to negotiate a higher number of research time after the award, or maybe it would place you into a more competitive position to win further research funding. And then what will the award actually provide you? So it will provide you 1 to 5 years of funding. So this is a change from previous rounds where it was 1 to 3. So you can ask for up to 5 years of funding. And you are actually eligible to be awarded now up to 2 awards sequentially, as long as they in total are not more than 5 years. So if you have a 2-year award, that's great. And then you feel that you will still be competitive with CARP award and still meet the scheme's eligibility criteria, you could come back in and ask and put in a new application for a further 3 years of funding. And what will we fund? So we'll fund a 20 to 50% contribution to your salary to support that protected research time, provide you research consumables, and this can include small items of equipment, support for posts such as your research and technical staff, some travel costs, and it also will cover the estates and indirect costs, so those overheads those overheads. There's also some other benefits for being CARP award holder. So if you're a CARP award holder, you're eligible for membership for the NHR Academy, because this is a joint funded scheme. Benefits include a members conference, leadership training, there's a mentorship program, and loads of additional events and workshops. And also our female award holders are eligible to apply for the AMS to Sustain program. So the awards are flexible to meet your needs. However, that means you need to be really careful about thinking about how much support and how much funding and the duration of the request you put in should very much be tailored to your needs and to your research project. Those requests should be justified, evidence-based, demonstrate the desired impact the award will have on the ability to engage in research in the long term. So in terms of staff costs, so we recognise that you would be delivering the research proposed at less than full time, and this will be alongside your clinical commitments. So you may, of course, wish to request some funding for staff to support the delivery of the project. Where you are asking for staff, it'd be really great if you can provide very clear sort of justification for those costs and maybe provide detail on their percentage of time, the duration the staff are going to spend on the project, and also link it to sort of specific work within the proposed study. You're also going to need a range of support in terms of putting in an application, and also if you are successful when you hold the award. So you're going to need a research partner. So you need at least one research partner. You can have more than one. And they should be included in the application as a co-lead. That research partner must have a proven track record of securing some funding and delivering high quality research, and provide that suitably stable environment for the duration of the awards. So this is very much about the research partner being able to provide you a really great environment to really capitalise on the award if you're successful. You're going to need a research organisation. The expectation is that the host research organisation is where your research partner will hold a contract of employment. The main thing is that research organisation needs to be eligible to hold UKRI funding, and this does include NHS bodies. They need to be registered for the UKRI Funding Service, and they need to accept responsibility for administering the award, and they need to be able to demonstrate appropriate support to enable you to successfully deliver your project. You also need support from your employer, so typically this will be your NHS employer. So just to sort of make it clear, there is absolutely no requirement under the scheme for you to relinquish your NHS post in order to take up your awards. So, local arrangements can be made to organise contracts and sort out payments between the UKHEI and an NHS trust if required. So in terms of the employer, they've got to be able to confirm that you're going to have that protected research time. They've got to have some clear and feasible plans for your time to be backfilled, and guarantee that you can re-enter the clinic full time without any loss of career progression or status at the end of the award if you choose to do so. So we've got a few tips about that support. So the research partner is crucial, and you need someone who understands what the scheme is and supports you throughout. So that's a tip directly from an award holder, a current award holder. The scheme itself is about partnerships. The collaboration should be synergistic and have clear value to both the applicant and the research partner. So that's from one of our CARP panel members. In terms of that employer support, it's really critical that people get meaningful and specific support from their employer. Those backfill details should be explicit. We often see many less support that make these global commitments about colleagues being happy to sort of cross cover, but it has to be more specific in that for a competitive application. And then finally, sort of an indicator of like exceptional support for an applicant is where details actually being provided about how the applicant will be supported following the end of the award to enable their continued engagement with research. It's not a must, but it is an indicator of that exceptional support. In terms of the application and assessment process, my colleague is going to tell you more about actually putting in the application, but here's a sort of a general overview. So the funding opportunity is open on the UKRI Funding Finder. And there will be a button at the top that says start the application, and then you can apply using the new UKRI Funding Service. Once the application is in, it will go out to expert review and you will receive a copy of their reports. We have a shortlisting stage to identify applications that may not be competitive and to ensure that the number of applications assessed at our final meeting is manageable and conducive to effective decision making. If your application is successful at this stage, you will be invited to respond to the review comments. So this is a written response. This is a really important part of the process and really sort of critical for sort of the assessment of your application at the funding meeting. So the funding meeting is a paper-based assessment, and this is where the funding decisions will be made. What's been included on here, the CARP award rates for 2019 to 2022. So you can see the award rate is around 24%, which is pretty sort of healthy for an MRC and an NHR scheme. So some quick tips on writing a good application. So there's no cheat sheet, but don't go it alone. Really sort of pull in that support from the different areas from your wider research network. Make sure that application is sort of clear and it's really clear that what you're proposing to do and why it's important. You want to make it as easy as possible for those assessing your application to understand what you're wanting to do and why it's important. Explain your methodology and your experimental design. Ensure that your study is feasible and make sure it can be delivered within the proposed duration and the budget. Highlight any risks and explain how you will minimise them and what your contingency plans are. So this is quite an often overlooked area, explaining those risks and those contingency plans. It's not something that will weaken your application. What it does is it demonstrates to reviewers that you've considered these risks, you have contingency plans for them, and you really understand your field and the limitations of the research within it. You need to demonstrate in your application how you will lead the research and extend your experience and research skill set. You know, you shouldn't just be collecting samples for someone else to be doing the research. Ensure you have that right support. How will the research partner support you and the delivery of the project? And how will your employer support you? Will they safeguard your research time? And as I said, the applicant sort of written response can make or break the final assessment. Definitely get support to write this. It's not the same as writing a rebuttal to a journal. The people reading your responses are not the ones that have reviewed your application. It will be our panel members. You need to explain yourself where needed and provide additional information as to why your application should be funded. And then just a slide with some sources of advice, which I obviously will include in the slide deck as I move around. So I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Sarah Collins, who's Head of Funding Operations, who is going to tell you about, provide an introduction to the new funding service. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sam. Can you move over to the next slide, please, Sam? So for those of you who've applied to the CARP scheme before, or for those that are just new to this funding opportunity, I wanted to talk to you about how you can apply for the scheme, because we will be using the new funding service for this scheme. So to start off with, just a few comparators to explain how the new service we're rolling out across UKRI differs from the GES system, which you may be familiar with if you applied to us before. So we have new sources of help for you. So we have a new funding service help desk, which replaces the GES help desk. We are moving away from some different parts of the application, although some remain familiar. So in the past, we asked you to include in your application a case for support as a PDF attachment, and we continue to ask for a PDF attachment as the majority of your application, but we now call this the vision and approach document. In addition to that, there are some separate questions that we were asking you to answer in the application about your career progression and the added value of your partnership. Somewhere where the application structure differs is in the past, we would have asked you for a CV with your application. but now we are asking you for something called a resume for research and information. Plus, we have a separate question about your clinical activities and training. Previously, we might have asked you to provide a cover letter with your application. We don't ask for cover letters anymore, and there are various ways that you can send us the information that you might have previously included in a cover letter. Also, we might have in the past asked for many letters of support with your application, and most of these are now replaced with statements that you can add to text boxes within the application. But we do still ask for one letter of support from your employer to be included as an attachment to the application. A major change as we move into our new service about how we process applications is that in the past, if there were errors or issues with an application we received, we might have returned it to you to fix those issues. As we move into the new service, we will not be returning applications to ask for them to be amended. So if you have not followed the guidance correctly and have completed your application in a way that provides an unfair advantage compared to other applicants, then we will withdraw your application in that case. Next slide, please, Sam. So how do you find application opportunities and how do you apply? The first thing that you can do is to look for opportunities on our new UKRI funding finder, and you can search for opportunities in summary form. And then if you find a summary opportunity such as CARP, which you're interested in, you can click through to read the full details of that funding opportunity. It is always important to read the full details of an opportunity to check that it is the right opportunity for you. And if you're clear that you do want to apply for this opportunity, there's the Start Application button, which appears quite prominently, which you can click, and that takes you through to the UKRI Funding Service to complete your application. Next slide, please, Sam. So once you're in the new funding service, or TFS, as I may refer to it, how will that look to you, and how do you go through completing the application? Well, it should be a simple experience for you. The guidance and questions are consistent with what you can see on the funding finder, and they appear within the application and reflect the assessment criteria. Your research office will have visibility of your application as soon as you create it, so they can support you. We would try to reduce the amount of information we ask for in the application, and only ask for it once. As I've already touched on, there are fewer documents for you to upload than in the past, and most of your answers can be completed in text boxes, and those have word counts which are checked before you can submit the application. Next slide, please, Sam. As we've moved over to the new funding service, we've updated the terminology we use for the roles within grant applications. This is so we can widen the diversity of people and ideas who can be funded, and to standardise these more across UKRI. The particular ones that you'll be using in the CARP scheme are the applicant is the project lead, and as we've discussed, you need a research partner, and that should be the project co-lead on the application. And there are some other roles that you may wish to include on your application, such as research and innovation associates or technicians, depending on the project you want to carry out and the justification for including those types of staff members on your application. As you move through and complete the different sections of the application, you can see there is guidance in each section as to how you complete it. This is exactly the same as what you see on the funding finder. So you will either have the type of question where you complete your response in a text box, the one on the left-hand side, or you may have a question such as the one on the right-hand side, which calls for you to upload a document in order to answer that question. That has to be a PDF file that you would upload and follow the instructions there. It will be very clear in the funding service which type of question it is, whether it's a question that you answer through completing details in a text box or uploading a document. and the service will not let you progress unless the required information has been completed. If there is a particular question that has a text box response that you do not need to answer, then you can simply answer not applicable or NA in that box and then save it, and that will allow you to continue and submit the application. So things to prepare for. We are using some new application questions and criteria in this scheme, which have been introduced across UKRI. And as I've said, you should have seen those already on the funding opportunity page on the funding finder. We are asking you to provide your vision and approach document as an uploaded file for this version of the opportunity. That may change for future rounds, but for this round, that is a document upload you'll be familiar with. As I previously mentioned, one of the bigger changes to prepare for is that we're asking for you to complete a resume for research and innovation rather than a traditional CV. So you can read quite a lot about what the resume for research and innovation is on the UKRI website. This is more of a narrative description of your experience and capabilities and those of your team. You can include selections of publications within it, but it is much more of a free-form response than a traditional CV. As I've said, there's guidance both on the UKRI website and within the application for the capability question that you will need to answer there as to what to put into that response. Another thing to prepare for is that if you've applied in the past, you may have been able to nominate reviewers for your application. Just to be clear that we will not be asking for you to nominate reviewers for this round in the new funding service. We will identify the reviewers that will review your application. And as I previously highlighted, be prepared that we can't return your application for amendment after you've submitted it. So please do check that you're happy with it and you've followed all the guidance before you pass it on to your research office and before they submit it to us. Some further tips on the new funding service. You will need to register for a funding service account to apply. It's not the same as a JES account if you have one of those already. We will ask you to complete an EDI profile, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, if you are the lead applicant, and applications cannot be sent to the research office until you have completed that section of your profile. Clearly, you can choose to not declare information, but you do need to actively go into that section and choose the options that you wish to be represented there. We do need the application to be created by the CARP lead applicant rather than someone in your research office or your project, your research partner. So do make sure that you, as the CARP lead applicant, start that application process. And working with your research office is critical. They will have visibility of your application right from the start, but it's important to know who will be supporting you in a research office from the organisation you're applying from and the timelines that they have in order to help you. They may have earlier deadlines than the MRC closing date regarding applications needing to be with them for checking. So please do find out what those timelines may be. And as this is a new service, we're continuing to develop it. So please do provide us feedback on anything that doesn't work well for you. There are options to do this throughout the funding service where you can click on the feedback button and give us some brief feedback about your experience. I've touched on the fact that we have some core questions and areas of assessment across UKRI, and this is a summary of what those key areas of your application for the CARP scheme are going to be. Some of these are common right across many UKRI funding applications, and some of these are unique to the CARP scheme. So we ask you about the vision of your project and what you're hoping to achieve with your proposed work, and also critically how you will approach the project and deliver it. Those are very standard questions that we ask across most of our funding opportunities. But more unique to CARP is, as I've mentioned a few times, we want to hear about your career progression, how this work will support you to achieve the goals that you want to in terms of a clinical academic career. We ask across UKRI about the capability of you as the applicant and your team to deliver the project in the research and innovation resume for research and innovation format. In the CARP scheme, it's very important for us to understand the support that you will have, as Sam's already talked about. So there's sections for you to complete about your research partner, your research organisation, and the support of your employer. And also unique to CARP, we want to understand the value of this partnership that you're proposing to set up between yourself and a research partner. Finally, the resources requested to do your project and the ethical and responsible research and innovations considerations of the project are core areas that we ask right across all applications to UKRI. When you're preparing your vision and approach document, which is the key description of what you intend to do, we're asking you to upload a document which is a single PDF, and this is just confirming what the length of that document can be. So the main content of your vision and approach is up to 4 pages long. There are 2 optional pages that you can also complete. One of these is to provide us with a visual project plan, such as a Gantt chart on 1 page. And additionally, you may provide a further page of information about reproducibility. So if you choose to take up the options of those 2 pages, the total length of your vision and approach document can be 6 pages in length. You do not need to include references within that document, as there is an additional question for you to include your references from throughout your application. But do remember, you need to stick strictly within these page limits, as reaching this guideline in terms of the document lengths would be a significant issue. We might lead us to withdraw your application if you went over these page limits. The resume for research and innovation, as I've said, replaces all CVs, is how we assess your capability to deliver the project. You have 1,000 words to highlight your most relevant skills and experience, and other members of your team if applicable. There are also 500 words available for you to talk about other additional issues that you might wish the assessors to consider, such as career breaks you may have had or impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. And please do refer to the guidance that's available on the UKRI website and within the application on how to complete a resume for research and innovation. The section that is directed specifically to the CARP scheme on career progression and support, we want you to answer these questions about these areas of career development and support during the award. So describing the career progression you're hoping to achieve, providing supporting statements from your research partner and from, importantly, the host organisation. They're 2 separate sections. And finally, still requiring your NHS employer to provide a letter of support which can be uploaded to the application, confirming their commitment to your career and future employment. There are various other sections of the application which may or may not be relevant to you depending on the scope of your project. So this is a summary of them here. These are all questions that you would complete through text box responses. But for example, if there were no facilities that you needed to use or your work did not involve animals, these are the sorts of questions where you could simply answer not applicable if that was the case for your application. If you have applied to UKRI before, or specifically to this scheme, do bear in mind that there are some things that we no longer require from you. So if you aren't directly asked for it in the application, then you do not need to provide it with your application. Some examples are the cover letter, the traditional CVs, an industrial collaboration framework form. There's now a question for you to answer about that. Any other letters of support apart from the employer letter of support and project partners, if applicable, and things like equipment quotes and business cases. These are all things you do not need to complete in your application anymore. So don't sort of try and read between the lines. If it's not clearly said you need to provide it, then you don't need to provide it. And mostly the application won't let you provide it, but please don't try and find ways to include things you think you might have provided in the past, as that will be work for you and also for us, and may lead us to reject your application if it's additional information we've not asked for. So coming to the end now, just to signpost some of the resources that are available to help you. Most of these are available through the UKRI website, and they include various short videos which are being added to regularly, which give you information on things like how, as an applicant, to apply, what your research office may be doing in terms of supporting you, and they'll be going on to demonstrate to you how your reviewers will be using the UKRI Funding Service. And finally, just to emphasise the support for putting the application together, your host organisation is your first point of call in terms of the research office, but also we are here and in the fellowships team, but also the UKRI Funding Service help desk is where you can send any technical or other questions through, either via email or by phone. So I'll hand back over now to Sam for us to go through some of the questions raised so far.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks ever so much, Sarah, for joining us and giving that overview of the funding service. So I'm now going to let Jamie Eaker, who is the funding manager for CARP, read out some of your questions.
Okay, yep. If you are ready, yep, I'll go with the first sort of one here by votes. So we have, for early stage clinical trials, do you typically expect full clinical trials unit involvement? Their costs may eat up a lot of budget in the school, but on the other hand, their involvement may improve credibility of, quote, exit strategy, unquote, to a future phase 2 trial application.
Okay, so there's sort of a couple of things to sort of consider here. So firstly, if you are seeking support for a clinical trial or a pilot or feasibility study, is for you to really consider whether CARP is definitely the right scheme for you, because there are quite a few mechanisms already out there to support a trial. So I'm thinking of sort of like the NIHR EME scheme, HDA and things like that. So really consider whether this CARP scheme is the right vehicle for you to deliver or undertake a feasibility trial. If you do feel that you can make a suitable project which fits within the sort of the aims and objectives of the CARP scheme, and it does involve a trial, then yes, so you need to make sure that what the research you're proposing is feasible and deliverable within a budget and within a time frame. So if you are requiring some CTU support, we would suggest that that is something that you would include within an application. Next question then, please, Jamie.
Okay, yep. So sorry, Sam, another one for you. I would like to supervise a researcher to work with me to develop the research fully, as the general thrust is to build clinical research capacity and form better academic partnerships in the subject area. Also, considering a research partner who carry out a form of specialized research methods, apologies, are both of these feasible?
Okay, so I'm thinking, I'm not sure which way around this is. So obviously the idea of the scheme is partnerships. So the applicant needs to be the clinician who is not sort of undertaking that substantial research activity. And then the co-lead needs to be the partner who is a more established researcher. That researcher can be based in the UKHEI or in an NHS trust, etc. You know, or in sort of primary second care themselves, as long as they are an established researcher and have that sort of track record and are able to support you for the duration of the award. And then in terms of research method, I mean, it may be that you want, I'm also assuming maybe it's that people want to bring in a researcher perhaps on their award. So you are allowed to cost staff onto the award to help with the delivery of it. Obviously, we do expect there to be some career development opportunities as well for the staff members employed on your grant. But you do need to make sure that if you are employing someone, that they are delivering a proportion of the research, because at the end of the day, these awards are to develop you, and for delivering that research that you're putting in a team for that. And you can, I think there's quite a few questions about, can I cost in a postdoc or a technician? And the answer is yes, you can cost in technician, research associate, postdoctoral research, a PDRA. And it's very much about, you know, what sort of level of experience do you need to help support you deliver that research, especially considering you are undertaking it part-time. You know, if you need someone as a technician who will be helping out with, say, cell culture during certain times because you've got clinics, or you need someone to support you with getting consent from patients and things like that, or maybe that would be via your local CRN that you get that support. So sort of different bits there. I think that's kind of answered the question. I wasn't 100% sure on the details of it though, Jamie. The next question.
That's great. I think you've covered a couple of others as well with that. Thank you. Yes, the next question. Is there the possibility of working in a different institution to the academic partner?
Yes. So we obviously expect in most cases that the host research organisation will be where your research partner is located, just because we assume that you'll be doing your research there with them on the ground, and therefore that it would make sense that the money would be there. And equally, you can have multiple research partners and they may be at different institutions. I think the main thing is that if it's like a local partnership and they're geographically near each other, I think it's probably going to be easy to make that case for having them at a different institution. I think if they are geographically distinct, you're going to need to make it clear in your application how you're going to actually manage that partnership, considering that you're geographically distinct, you'll still be employed by your NHS employer, who still have to be on the ground doing those clinics there. And then how will you then go and do research elsewhere and sort of be be supported by that research partner? Next question.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry if just avoid, say, removing just sort of upvotes, as that is just jigging sort of my list while I'm losing a couple. Yeah, a quick one here. Can there be more than one co-lead?
Yes. So there can be more than one co-lead. So we say you need at least one research partner, which is the co-lead. But equally, if there are people bringing in different expertise, different types of support, then please do sort of feel that you can include them on an application.
Okay, great. The next one, I have an NIHR HTA award, which covers 1 PA of my time, but my potential CARP application is with an academic partner. Can I still apply?
So again, there's sort of a couple of things to unpack. So 1 PA of time, I mean, we would expect that applicants to the scheme would typically have one or less program of activity, or sort of half a day, week's worth of research time within an application. So the answer would be yes. So you could apply. In terms of the HTA funding, it would be, I don't know, obviously, if you're the lead on that or a co-lead, and obviously I don't know how much the award is, but obviously if it's a substantial amount of funding and you are a lead on that application, it could impact your competitiveness. But if it's something that you're sort of costed on and you're part of the the research team supporting that, again, that wouldn't impact on your competitiveness and you would be sort of free to apply to the scheme. Again, with all these things where there aren't these hard boundaries, it's very much about, can you make a competitive application? Can you make a compelling case as to why you need this opportunity to fund you, and sort of get you where you need to be compared to other funding opportunities, or perhaps sort of what you're already being funded to do already.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I did have one and I moved. Apologies. Yeah, next, before I would try to move on to more TFS related ones, can the research partner be a holder of an NIHR fellowship working in the NHS, or is it better to have someone working in an academic department, i.e. university?
Okay, again, a couple of things there. So it doesn't, if the research partner is working in an NHS trust or a university, as long as it's the best person to support your research in the project that you're planning to undertake, it doesn't matter where they are located themselves. In terms of them being an fellow. So obviously their advanced fellowships span sort of different career stages. Some can actually be quite early on in their career. And I guess it would be, does that NHR fellow have enough track record and sort of experience at supporting researchers to provide you the level of support you need for the duration of your award? It could be that they do, or if they don't, you could include them as one of your research partners, as one of the co-leads, and perhaps maybe bring on someone else who's a little bit more sort of senior in standing to sort of help support that application.
Okay, great, thank you. A more move on to a first TFS related one. Can you please confirm if the funding, let's just move, if the funding service application needs to go through approval by the applicant employer research office, e.g. NHS, rather than the research partner organisation, e.g. HDI? It will be hosting and providing the research environment for the research and employing research staff on the project.
I'll start with that. My understanding is that it should go through the research organisation. The host research organisation is where the approvals lie and submission to UKRI. The NHS organisation is providing confirmation through the employer letter of support that they're providing to include in the application. Please correct me if there's any nuances there, Sam, that I've missed in terms of who submits.
Yep. So yeah, so very much needs to be your host research organisation. If your host organisation is a UKHEI, then it needs to be submitted by them. If it is your NHS trust, it needs to be them. I think this is something where you need to probably have a good sort of discussion with your research office, or maybe research officers, about where is best to sort of submit that application. You know, someone has to agree to administer the award. It needs to be where you're going to be undertaking the research. Where is it going to be easiest to have basically the money and to spend on your research during that time. I would say that for 95% of CARP applications, they do come in via UKHIs, but we do also get them come in from NHS trusts as well. So it's really down to your sort of personal circumstances as to what is your host research organisation. But it is that host research organisation, as Sarah said, that needs to be managing the application through TFS.
Great, thank you. Next one, is there a separate section for patient/public involvement or co-production of the research plan? If not, where would you suggest placing this information?
So no, there isn't. So I know that on NHR applications, this is a section. It's not something that the MRC have a separate section for. Sarah, do you know if there's a sort of the best place that would be to put that sort of information within TFS?
My advice is in the approach section, how you will approach the project and how you will have public patient involvement and inclusion advise on your approach to what you're proposing to do.
Thank you. Next question. Can the award be used to support 1 to 2 PhD students with the applicant being the overall lead?
No. So this award is very much to do with the applicant developing their research capabilities, and equally for MRC opportunities, you cannot cost on, for any opportunity, you cannot cost on PhD students. It's something that is not within our policy. All PhD students for MRC are supported via our doctoral training partnerships or through a separate clinical research training fellowship scheme. So no PhD students, please.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, that's moved. Next question, does the research partner have full access to the application online?
I'll take that one, and it's something I failed to emphasise when I was speaking. Apologies. I stated that the CARP lead applicant should be the person to create the application in the funding service, and it's really important to note that the lead applicant is the only person that can edit the application in the funding service. When you add your project co-leads, they will be notified they've been added to the application and will have some limited visibility to the application, but they are not able to edit the application. That is all done through the project lead. So if you do need to collaborate on answers to questions, it's best to prepare to use the funding service information of the questions that we're asking you and potentially work outside of TFS, if you want to co-edit answers to particular questions, and then the project lead is able to then either upload those documents or paste the answers into the text boxes of the questions.
Great, thank you. Right, next question. Sorry, Sam, it's popped up in the Q&A that you'd like to just answer something live.
Oh no, sorry, I was fiddling with something.
No, that's okay, no problem. Okay, we'll move on to
causing mayhem.
That's okay. I'll just move on to a quick one here. How much can we apply for? I appreciate there's no exact figure, but some rough guidelines would be helpful.
Yeah, so there isn't an exact figure. So you have to be mindful of the aims and the objectives and the scope of the scheme. So, you shouldn't be putting in applications which would be better served by, say, funding for a clinical trial via sort of EME or sort of a programme grants worth of work, and therefore, this cost would really increase. So the budget last year for awards, which were between 1 and 3 years duration in funding, so slightly shorter awards if you wanted to come to 5, was around 5 million, and I think we anticipated last year to make around sort of 15 awards. So say like the average cost of applications last year was around a £300,000 mark. However, that is not sort of a place to aim for. Some research is cheaper, some is more expensive, and so an assessment is done on sort of value for money, not sort of on cheapness. We don't fund low cost awards. We fund things which are sort of good value for money. Is the amount of money you've requested fully justified, and does it reflect the sort of the impact the award is going to have on your career, on that scientific impact and patient impact and things like that? And is there enough money available for you to actually deliver what you've set out? If you've undercosted, then the panel will see that, and they will assume that you're essentially going to run out of money before being able to deliver on the work that you propose. So it is this sort of hitting this sweet spot. You need this magic balance between it being well justified. All those resources need to be sort of well justified, and there is a section where we ask for the resources and costs, but there was also a space for you to explain sort of some of those higher cost items, but why you're requesting them. And then, as I said, that sweet spot of not undercosting the application.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's just jump. So, apologies, the one I had can no longer find. What kind of support can be asked from the co-PI side, such as cost for free co-PI, etc.?
So I assume this is support that they're requesting from the co-lead rather than support put into the application, or we can discuss both. So in terms of the co-lead and the support, so the support they should provide you obviously is they are a co-lead, so they should have input into the project, into the like intellectual input into the project. They should sort of help you with developing it. They should help you all the way through the process. They are an active partner. It's supposed to be a mutually beneficial collaboration. So they should be sort of really involved in that sort of helping you lead on that research. In terms of sort of tangible support, it could be that they're giving you access to their lab space. If it's a lab-based project, it could be sort of access to other things like maybe some databases or data sources they have, tissue banks, patient populations, their expertise. It could be that it's access to perhaps some of their sort of research staff. So it's really sort of down to you and your project and what it is that you need from them. In terms of what the co-leads can take from the project, so we don't expect co-leads to be requesting their time to be funded via the award. However, if you can sort of, if they're providing something, if they're actually going to do some analysis or undertake something, then you can cost them up to sort of 5% in total across the research partners within to an application.
Great, thank you. Apologies, this one came in a while ago, so apologies to keep the individual waiting. As a non-medical research group leading R&D into data science and detector technologies, is there an accessible platform where we can find clinical experts that are looking for partners?
Oh, well, we don't we don't have that. So the partnership is very much something that you have to make yourself. I would suggest if you are interested in either finding a partner or supporting someone put in an application, talk to your research office, your local research office, and sort of find out whether they could sort of help with sort of brokering those partnerships. I know that I went to a meeting a little while ago hosted by the Healthcare and Research Faculty in Wales for their cancer researchers, and they sort of invited both sort of potential applicants and potential co-leads to that webinar to help sort of foster those collaborations. So, but yes, as a funder, we're not brokering those for you.
Sorry, one I had is just right. Apologies. Can your research partner be someone that you have worked with before if the research proposal will develop the individual's research leadership skills and grow the partnership further?
Yes, that would be absolutely fine. We quite often see people come in with research partners that they have some sort of relationship with previously. Equally, we see people with sort of brand new partnerships. But so yes, either way, as long as you can make a case as to why, what they're bringing to it and how they're going to support you, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you. And yeah, next one. Can the host organisation be different to the research partners organisation? Is travelling there during research time enough of a justification?
So the expectation is that the host research organisation is where your research partner is based. However, sort of practically, we know that sometimes that's not that feasible. I think if the case is that you want to apply from a research organisation which isn't where your research partner is hosted, probably best to get in touch with us at carp@mrc.ukri.org to sort of, tell me a little bit more about the need for hosting it at a different organisation to your research partner, and then we can sort of have a bit of discussion about that.
Great, thank you. Another one. For applicants who are applying to extend their current CARP grant, does it have to be a different project or an extension to the current one?
Yeah, so this is to do with the new rule that's come in this year, where you can apply for up to 2 CARP awards sequentially. So it's not an extension, it is a sequential award. It is a new application, a separate application in open competition with others. So it could be that it is, if you've already had 2-3 years worth of funding and you're wanting to come in for a further CARP award for another sort of 2 or 3 years worth of funding, taking it up to that total of 5 years funding. It could be a new project, it could be an extension of your previous award, it could be an evolution of it and a step change in it. But obviously the same sort of rules and eligibility criteria and the fact that you need to sort of articulate the added value is still going to apply. As I said, it's an open competition. It is as such a new application. It's not necessarily an it's not an extension. We're not extending anyone's existing CARP awards.
Okay, just a couple more to squeeze them in. So just to follow on from the PhD students, I understand that PhD students aren't funded, but is it okay if the applicant currently co-supervises ongoing PhD projects?
Oh, yeah, I mean, if you've already got existing partnerships going on and you're co-supervising, then that's absolutely fine. I think we get one tiny last question in, Jamie.
Okay. Let's just go up. Right. So yeah, the last one from a pharmacist, and their research may need some medical decisions to deliver. Can they include consultant medical time?
So if they are involved in sort of the delivery of the research, you could obviously you could cost them into the application. Equally, it's also worth investigating the need for a SOCAT, and therefore if there's going to be any sort of NHS support costs, which will be covered by the local CRN. So definitely investigate that. I think that's dead on 11:30, or maybe 30 seconds after. But thanks ever so much, everyone, for joining us and for listening to the webinar today. I said this is being recorded, and we will do a Q&A document. If we haven't got your question, it will be answered. I'd like to say thank you very much to Jamie for coming and reading out the questions, and thank you ever so much, Sarah, for coming and telling us all about the funding service. So goodbye, everyone.